Welcome to the talk show Promising Bangladesh, sponsored by Crown Cement. And this is Sinha M.A. Sayeed, anchoring this very talk show. Viewers, everybody knows very well that Bangladesh is now passing through a very critical juncture of its political life. And especially, demands from the students called the fall of Sheikh Hasina. And following this consequences, many things are going on at this very moment. And to suit the very purposes, we have invited two guests. One is Barrister Asaduzzaman Fuaad. He is the Joint Member Secretary of AB Party and one of the leading vocalists in the talk show world. How are you, Mr. Fuaad?
I'm fine, thank you.
Other being Professor Kalimullah, a person who need not to be introduced. So I say, Professor Kalimullah, how are you?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Mr. Fuaad, the ongoing situation in Bangladesh is very much confusing indeed. Also promising, at the same time confusing. What is your understanding?
Well, I think I was trying to find a similar consequential event in our own history, because the history of uprising that we have read in the textbooks, the most prominent was the 1969 one, and then of course in 1990, anti-Ashad movement. But what happened in fact in July and August is not only phenomenal in our context, but also in a global context. The closest that I can take it to is the Arab Spring. What started with a simple trader, street trader, vendor, burning his own body, protesting, bribing the police and kind of things, and the lack of opportunity from the state, turned into so violent, and the participation of the people. And exactly the same thing, a pretty resolved issue from 2018 has been reinstated and ignited the young generation. And a simple demand, quota reform, has turned into so violent, and then with so many bodies, so many sacrifices. I cannot even find out that many people have been killed by the Pakistanis apart from the war, during the 24 years of tenure. In 1 or 2 days, hundreds, perhaps thousands of people have been shot dead by the police and the law enforcement agencies of a free country, an independent country. The very proclamation of our independence had promised us a free nation which shall not face any discrimination whatsoever. So the students' demand was exactly what has been enshrined in our glorious declaration of 1971, which was read on 17th of April when the government in exile was formed. So it's a huge phenomena, uprising. I should call it perhaps the Bangla Spring, if I may. And the sacrifices made, huge. And I have profoundly paid tributes to those young men and women, children, elderly people, bystanders doing nothing, just watching and observing the events. Children playing on the rooftop, kind of things have been killed in these incidents. It is such a brutality that we condemn what the law enforcement agencies had done, and also pay tributes to the protesting students, what they have done, phenomenal participation, and for a very simple thing, that we want justice against any discrimination, and then justice and accountability for those who have been shot dead. And then, without any other demand, getting no responsibility from the state, they demand that somebody should go and leave. So the simple thing and the persistent mistakes made by the regime had turned into the extent that the only person, the unelected, if I may call the only surviving lady dictator in the world, refused to pay heed to the demand of the students. And sadly, she had to flee. Situation had gone so bad. No law enforcement agencies were prepared to carry on shooting people any further. And sadly, we have seen even our armed forces were shooting people. Like there was a guerrilla warfare going on the streets of Dhaka. There was a 3-layer of soldiers crawling on the knees and standing, shooting at the same time. Thousands of live ammunition was shot at. So it's absolutely unacceptable that these people on uniforms had the oath to defend the land and the people. They have been in breach of it. So not only police, not only RAB and BGB, not only the SWAT and the CRT, our own armed forces, we have seen helicopters firing hundreds and thousands of live ammunitions. Absolutely unprecedented. The only thing I can remember is what happened to Tahrir Square in Egypt. Like bullets, thousands of bullets were fired at when the peaceful, unarmed protesters gathered and protesting a simple thing: we want democracy, elected government. So it's in one side that we are relieved, we are free of a dictator, an unelected government for last 16 or 17 years. You see, euphoric moment, the joy I have seen on the streets on Monday, the 5th of August. I'm not sure whether the elders like Professor can remember the things happened in 1971. I've read from the history books what happened on the 15th of August in 1947, 16 December. But the things we have witnessed on the streets of Dhaka and across the country, cities and the rural, urban and periphery, everywhere, it was phenomenal experience, phenomenal. And there was no single evidence that people were shot at and being killed, anyone was carrying any firearms. Absolutely, there was no evidence. And that iconic picture of Abu Sayeed, holding hands on his stick, and on the chest of the Abu Sayeed, it was not Abu Sayeed, it was the red and green map of Bangladesh. That anything comes which doesn't match with our glorious declaration of independence, we shall put up with our chest. We'll die before the bullets and the tanks. But the rights, the question of entitlement shall not be compromised. So it's a historic thing, and even with Arab Spring, it was quite concentrated in major cities. Here, it was everywhere. Schools, colleges, universities, in the local towns, the small towns, villages. Women came out with the brooms, sticks, supporting and demonstrating in favor and support with the students. So it was a historic, euphoric moment. It was also historic because there was no central leadership. We have seen 1969. We have seen in 1990. There was an elected student movement, Dakshu, and the other university student leaders who led the movement and then been taken over by the national leadership. Here, it was absolutely an organic, the nation and the middle class, urban middle class, came out just for the cause. I'm not happy with it, what happened. I don't care what quota is doing it. And remember those private university students, we used to mock them for different reasons, brag, oh, north-south, oh, you guys didn't belong here. You're just waiting for a transition.
I will come to you again, Mr. Fuaad.
Yes.
Professor Kalimullah.
Yeah.
What is your study?
Well, I fully endorse and agree with Barrister Fuaad. I was mesmerized, listening to him, the narrative. It may continue hours together. The whole episode started with my martyr student Abu Said. When I was Vice Chancellor of Begum Rokeya University in Rangpur, I found that he has got himself admitted in the English department in 12th batch in 2019. He was from a humble background, used to sort of send money through tuition and other sort of endeavors home as well. He was not active in politics at all, as far as I know. And the day before he was martyred, the president of Begum Ruqayya University Student League, which is the front organization of ruling party Awami League, Mr. Promel Borua, he physically tortured him. And the last encounter Abu Sayeed had with the electronic media, more than one electronic media, he stated, and we could hear from the horse's mouth, that Promel Borua slapped him and forced him so that he doesn't take part in this movement. But he took the vow, and this physical torture sort of ignited him in a way. And the very day he sort of was there in front of the campus gate, and the police sort of was trigger happy, I would say, shot him in his chest more than once. And he didn't try to flee. He stood there and received the bullets, you know. A symbol of this, I would say, revolution. The second revolution. The first one was 1971, I would say, and the second one. And he has become the symbol. As soon as I heard about it, I issued a condolence message as the fourth Vice Chancellor of the university, and immediately took part in several talk shows online, the Face the People Canada, Table Talk UK, Cosba TV, and others. And I sort of lamented, I sort of demanded justice, and I vowed that if I was there on duty, I would have resigned in protest. And I did a clarion call to my successor, the current Vice Chancellor, Professor Hasibur Rashid. He could do so. But what happened, we found that he fled from the campus with RAB protection, took refuge in Circuit House in the city center, and from there he sort of took refuge in the Rangpur cantonment, which is known as the Northern Shield of Bangladesh. And then he took BGB escort and went to Sayeedpur airport and came back to Dhaka, and he didn't venture to go and show solidarity with the students. So insensitive an act. I'm ashamed of him and his administration, the proctor and others who were there. They could follow the footsteps of Professor Johar of Russia University. He embraced martyrdom. You know, so one life to live. As an academic, as the father figure, Papa Tiger of the campus, they failed to relinquish their responsibility, minimum, responsibility. I condemn. And the lessons learned should be, people like them shouldn't step into the shoes of such coveted positions in academia. And I think that those who were appointed as vice chancellors or pro-vice chancellors or treasurers by the former, the recommendation of former education minister Depu Moni and Naufel, they should all be removed with immediate effect, because they failed to sort of read the pulse of their students, their sentiments, and they have alienated themselves. They thought that it's better to please the Prime Minister than protect their students.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kalimullah, and thank you very much, Mr. Fuaad. Viewers, we are going for a short break. Please keep watching. Viewers, we are back to the talk show, Promising Bangladesh, sponsored by Crown Cement. And this is Sinha Sayeed anchoring this talk show. We are having talks with Barrister Fuaad and Professor Kalimullah. Mr. Fuaad, you are a legal expert. Do you think there are so many constitutional and political lapses after the very fall of Sheikh Hasina?
Oh, certainly. My personal position is that there has been no, in fact, legitimate government since 2008. Even although that there are electoral participation of the opposition in 2008 election, but reading the book of the Pranab Mukherjee, the coalition years, it was quite imperative that there has been a lot of interference and installment of the last regime into power. So my position is there has been no elected government since 2008. Now, what happened in January 2024 was so apparent, much more clearer than the sun itself, that it was a fake election. So we have been in breach of the constitution anyway. Now, what happened by the forceful removal, if I may say, or fleeing the country by the lady dictator, Her Majesty the Queen of Bengal, there has been no dissolution of the parliament. So the so-called PM had left on Monday afternoon, perhaps, early afternoon. So there had been more than 24 hours. The following day, late afternoon, the parliament was dissolved. Now the issue is, as there was no elected parliament, so there was no elected president either. So the president himself was holding the office without any legitimacy or mandate from the people and their representatives. So we have been in breach of it, even though, so that after 24 hours, we had no prime minister. So what happened? There is no head of executive. Now, who ran that 24 hours? Who ran the country? President cannot run the country because it's not a caretaker president. There is no emergency declared as per the constitution. So the framework itself has been breached. Now what we are seeing now, one after another, executive decisions have been made on behalf of whom? There's nobody in place. So who is replacing the IG? Who is replacing whom? Because no emergency. It's not a presidential government. So it's already quite chaotic. Now, why we see the transition should have taken place and how it should. My humble understanding is that the office of president should have immediately removed the judges of the appellate division, including the Chief Justice, because they have been so corrupt and regime loyalist. The most senior and most competent High Court Judge, Dr. Rifat Ahmed, Mr. Justice, he should have been appointed as the Chief Justice. And then on, Mr. President should have resigned, suspend the Constitution, and Mr. Chief Justice would have taken as an acting president of the time, and then he would have opened up the discussion for the interim government formation. Now what's going on is basically one after another constitutional breach is happening, because what's going on, we all know from order and dictum from the cantonments, the president is basically signing the letters, which he cannot do that. So now what happened, all the political leaders have been cordoned into the cantonment and then taken to the office of the president. That was absolutely disgraceful for any political activist or political party. And the consultation had a very negative impact on the student leaders, because it was them who should have consulted first before the political parties, because it was them who made the successful uprising, not the political parties. Although I represent a political party, but I have to be honest, I was part of it. I expressed solidarity. I was on the streets with the students, with the peaceful protest and kind of things, but that does not give me the legitimacy to represent the movement itself. So that was not done until 2 days. So the student leaders only invited yesterday, and as the last resort of discussion, because they were not happy about political parties going and bargaining on their behalf. So the whole process has already been in the breach of constitution. So already constitution is de facto suspended. So it is better, with little respect to the Republic's constitution, it should be suspended, and with thorough process being followed. So what I would like to see immediately, even before any person is appointed as the head of the interim government or the caretaker chief, that an acting president should be in place first, because the Mr. President in office, he doesn't have any mandate or a legitimacy. He is already in breach of constitutions and the office of the oath of the office. So it should not be continued any further. Now, we appreciate the armed forces belatedly taking steps to be in the side of the people. Although we are not happy that they have been part of the genocide, along with the police, RAB, BGB, SWAT, CRT, and I would like to see every head of the forces, including the intelligence agencies, come forward and apologize on behalf of the institution to the nation, to the protesters, to the martyred families, that what they have done, their participation in the genocide, the worst genocide in Bangladesh history, and they should make a promise and pledge to the nation that they will amend their mistakes according to the investigation report comes up and from the experts, and how should have been done. That is part of the accountability and justice. So apology from all forces is vital, because they've all been complacent or actively participants in the genocide. So without that apology, that regret from the forces, justice and accountability cannot start, because that's the basis, the first job for the interim government has to do. How will that be performed? So I would like to see President resign, Constitution suspended, Mr. Chief Justice should be taken as the acting president, and then to have the interim government in place with the consultation of the people. And that is the only course of action that I would like to be followed.
Thank you very much. Professor Kalimullah, Barrister Fuaad narrated the whole thing in the light of the Constitution and the political standoff at this very moment. And to some extent, his logic is very strong indeed.
Of course.
As a professor of public administration, at the same time, chairman of JANIPOP, you are very much involved with the process of so many things in this statecraft. What is your exact realization?
Well, what Barrister Fuaad has come up with, all sort of procedures should be corrected, and we should be in the right track. There are a lot of if and but, I know it's there, but those who are representing the erstwhile regime and are still performing their duties, sitting in coveted positions, there's a moral dimension here as well. We all know how our honorable president was shown in. He was simply handpicked by the former Prime Minister. And it's a household story, like he was dreaming to become, aspiring to become a parliament member. He ended up becoming the president. It was like heaven's hello to him. And, the there were a lot of constitutional issues as well. And I took part in several talk shows. And I found a lot of people went to see him when he was president-elect, took photographs and had photo sessions. But I thought that I must not do that. Until to date, I didn't meet him, because I thought that process was faulty. And as a former commissioner of SEC, as per SEC rule, he cannot assume such responsibility. The former regime should have amended the constitution of SEC and then could invite him to be sworn in. So the very start was morally not correct. So what Barrister Fuaad has come up with, it has merit, and once a mistake cannot be sort of endorsed again and again, it should be corrected. It's better late than never, I believe.
What about his suggestion?
You know, as a...
I mean, in particular, the Chief Justice of Bangladesh.
That's right.
Should take over as acting president.
Yeah. I mean, the presidents, Justice Shahabuddin, not Mr. Chuppu, the way he was sworn in, I mean, these precedents, I mean, we can follow that. And, you know, if you do not find precedents within the country, you can go without, from elsewhere. That's how, I mean, judicial process operate.
It means there will be constitutional lapse.
Yes.
This
it should be corrected.
Barrister Fuaad, Mr. Kalimullah more or less agree with you. And do you think the President of the Republic of Bangladesh is in a position to handle this situation, being very much away from his background, I mean, his alignment with Awami League?
I think nothing wrong with the alignment with the Awami League if the Awami League government had the mandate of the people. nothing should be a problem with it. Excuse me. The issue is the regime did not have the legitimacy to elect him from the elected parliamentarians. That process was not fair. So nothing wrong with having a president from a regime had to flee from the country. Nothing wrong with it. But in principle, as Professor was suggesting, that he is also already in breach of the conflict of interest issue. And there's a lot of news beforehand. His alignment and relationship with the Asylum business conglomerates and with different companies, and how he got benefited from different places. So there are so many issues about him that he should not have been in the place at the first hand. So, and then on, given that he doesn't have the legitimacy, he doesn't have the guts to act fairly, the way Mr. Justice Shahabuddin acted. So I am quite afraid whether this president would be able to handle the matter at all. He's basically nothing in his control now. He's basically a poodle. He's just signing letters.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Viewers, we're going for a short break and come to you again very soon. Viewers, we are back to the talk show Promise Bangladesh, sponsored by Crown Cement, and this is Sinha Sayeed, sponsoring the talk show. Well, we are having talks on the issues related to the fall of Sheikh Hasina and the consequences. Now, the most important point is challenges before the government. Well, Mr. Kalimullah, what kind of challenges are before the government at this very moment?
Well, with immediate effect, I would say nanosecond later, we should come up with a government, in whatever form. I was having a chat this morning with our Honorable Chief Election Commissioner, Kaji Habibullah, and he was saying that even during our liberation war, there was an acting president. So we should or could have an acting prime minister. And it seems there is no government. Similar situation we had to go through back in November 1975. We didn't know whether Khalid Musharraf was in charge or someone else. A couple of weeks we had to sort that out. And the present impasse has encouraged miscreants to take up law in their hands. Even we heard that Muhammadpur, dacoits or robbers, whatever you say, they were entering and robbing things from door to door. And similar thing happened in Dokhin Khan area, even in Dhanmondi and other places. In the capital city, and think about the rest of the country, the countryside. It's an anarchy which is going on, and police is on strike, and even after 48 hours we found that ANSA, another auxiliary force, has been called in, and you cannot say that ANSA is a match to police, or for that matter other agencies like RAB and other forces. And there are sort of instances which could be draw attention of our immediate neighbor, that second largest community of Bangladesh is in danger. There are different stakeholders in our neighboring country who can come up with cry of sort of call, and we might face serious challenge. I heard that some Rohingyas, they entered into southeastern part of Bangladesh, taking advantage of this situation. So our border is just without any vigil, and we are in real crisis situation.
Thank you very much. Barrister Fuaad, life of the interim government should be 100 days or more. There is a rumor. And to reform the constitution at administrative areas, do you think the government of 100 days shall be in a position to ensure the expected results of the people?
I doubt it, because we need to talk about the purpose of the interim government. What is the essence of it? The essence is basically creating an environment conducive to hold a free, fair, credible election. That's exactly the essence of the interim government. Now, what does it require of? It requires wholesale reform of the civil administration, because the mess last regime had left with across the institutions, be it the election commission, be it our civil bureaucracy, be it our military bureaucracy, be it the law enforcement agencies, intelligence agencies, be it the local government, everything pretty much in mess, because we have 43,000 polling stations. It's a huge electoral exercise, and it requires millions of staffs. Now, the way the last regime had placed their own party cadres in different places without any overhauling of that process, a free, fair election cannot be delivered. So that's why from our side, we proposed a 7-point framework that a transitional government needs to be undertaking. Now, the crux of the moment is to form an interim government. That is also a challenge because there are so many power players acting. There are international players acting with contradictory interests here. There are issues within the armed forces. We have seen a lot of movements there. There are issues with the oligarchs. They don't want the regime to be collapsed altogether. There is no law and order situation. Total public administration had collapsed. So much things to do by this government. And how to deal with the superpowers. New Delhi, Beijing, Moscow, Washington, European Union. We have seen how China and Russia and India have helped this regime have a fake election in January. So losing their core country, Delhi is quite worried. And given their supported dictator had to flee, and they are now giving her exile and refuge in their own country. That gives a very bad precedence to the people of Bangladesh. That's what we have been talking about for last 16 years, that this regime doesn't have a mandate, then how they're in power, because they have been supported by other countries. Now that needs to be sorted out. So there's a lot of issues, counter issues, coups, possibility, counter coups. We have seen it in 1975, we have seen it in 1981, we have seen in the past, these things happen. So there are so many challenges. The foremost is to have a proper guideline of transfer of power and have a very tough, credible acting president. And the current Mr. President doesn't have that credibility. So the framework, we see it possible, is Mr. Justice Rifat Ahmed, the most senior High Court judge, to be appointed as the Chief Justice, and then to the office of the acting president, and then to be followed with a wider consultation. And it shouldn't take more time. It's already too late to form a government.
More time. It is 1 year, 2 years.
Well, I think I will not go into the months and years. I think it was the objectives at the earliest possible time. That doesn't mean that 3 years, 6 years, no regime without any electoral mandate should not stay in power for a long time, because that regime doesn't have the accountability.
BNP Secretary General Mr. Fakhrul Islam, he said it should be not more than 3 months.
Well, I think as a party, BNP has every right to make their projections. But what my position is that I would like to see the criteria to have a level playing field to hold a free, fair election to be met first. There is no reason that how that could happen in 3 months. I don't see any possibility that the reforms Bangladesh didn't have in last 53 years can be done in 3 months. So I would be quite skeptic to have such election in 3 months.
What about your opinion?
Our past experience is not
about the life
good.
Of interim government.
You know, the so-called 111 regime, you know, it continued for almost 2 years. And at the end, what we got? Many pundits believe that it was the most corrupt regime in the history of Bangladesh. So we don't want to have similar experience at the moment. It should be short-lived, shouldn't be more than 6 months.
Well then, Barrister Fuaad, what are the best things waiting for us?
Well, the best thing I would say, the consciousness the new generation gained, millions of apolitical youths became political. They have been subjects and to some extent slaves of the country. They certainly over the weeks became citizen. They have learned how to claim the ownership of the country, which has been fraudulently taken by the last regime. So the very republic we aspired to have in 1971, it is a very starting point. And I believe that the first republic had fallen. We need to build a second republic based on the principles of the Declaration of Independence. It's a brilliantly drafted principles to govern and form a second republic: equality, human dignity, social justice, accountability, democratic transition, so forth. So the best thing we have achieved, millions of youths, Generation Z, became political. They became vocal about their rights. They are taking ownership and belongings from the state, and they're saying enough is enough. It shall not continue. We must have a different, a better, people, citizen-oriented country, a welfare state.
Thank you very much, Barrister Fuaad. Mr. Kalimullah, 1 minute for you.
We must and take vow to defend the plural space, come what may. And that should be the basic minimal sort of challenge which must be met.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kalimullah, and thank you very much, Barrister Fuaad. Viewers, we are about to end this talk show, and before ending the talk show, as usual, I have to summarize what the two speakers explained, narrated, and viewed here. The most important thing is that both of them are very much aware of what is going on at this very moment, and they felt tremendously the life of interim government should not be so short or so long. It should be in such a standing so that the reforms being talked of from different corners must have space, must have time. And Professor Kalimullah very categorically referred to the life of the then army backcatter government in 2008. Barrister Fuaad is also vocal about reforms. And reforms is the main issue of the anti-discrimination students movement that called the fall of Sheikh Hasina government. We don't know whether it will be possible or not, but BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul, meanwhile, passed a message to the nation through a press release and speeches that it should not be more than 90 days. This chapter is very complicated. If there is an election after 90 days, no reforms will take place. At least this interim government should have to perform the routine work. Whether it will be in line with the aspiration, hopes and aspiration of the people of Bangladesh, especially the students' movement, we are not sure. But the thing is that the days ahead are very, very challenging. And thank you very much. We'll meet you again in the next talk show. Thank you.